Welcome to Laughter for All. It's the podcast with Comedian Nazareth.
Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Laughter for All podcast. I am Comedian Nazareth, and thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful Tuesday night in Southern California. Thank you so much for being faithful subscribers and followers of the podcast. And we've been bringing you comedians, actors, models, singers, worship leaders, pastors, you name it, athletes, attorneys, whatever you need, whoever we think can bless you and can, add to your life. We bring them on the podcast and interview them. So it's not always comedians, but this week it is. And when we talk to comedians, we don't try to just be funny, and we don't try to, we just want to laugh. We want to know about their real life. We want to know about what makes them happy, what makes them sad, how they build their career. Because I think comedians are very intelligent people and very emotionally, aware people. So it makes a big difference when you listen to them. So today is no exception. Okay, what am I going to be next? Oh, by the way, we had the Laughter for All on Saturday the 22nd in San Bernardino. It was a great success. About 1,300 people. Wonderful event. We had a great time. Also, my next show is going to be on the 12th, but that's a private show for mental health at in Waldemar, California, at Cornerstone Church in Waldemar, and we're gonna be there. I'm gonna be there doing a show. It's a private show, so I can't tell you if you can attend or not. I don't think you can. So, but anyway, I have some of my friends are watching right now, Teresa and Sarah and Catherine. Thank you guys for joining us. And remember, we have 72 in the first minute. So you can ask questions when we start the podcast. So, and maybe we can answer them. So anyway, on the 12th, I'm going to be at Cornerstone. On the 19th, I'm going to be in Omaha, Nebraska, doing the radio show, a comedy concert, Nazareth, in Omaha, Nebraska. So you can get tickets to that one. And then I head to Washington, D.C. from there. And then I'm going to be on the 700 Club. Remember, I was supposed to be there, and then Pat Robertson died. So we moved it to the August 22nd. On the 23rd, I'm going to be in Norco, California, doing a marriage retreat. And then from there, I go on a cruise to Alaska with Mike Silva Ministries. So I think they have tickets still if you want to go for a week in Alaska. I'll be there. It goes out of Vancouver. Okay, enough of that. I'm ready to bring my new friend. He's a new friend, never met him in person. He was highly recommended by my good friend Steve Geyer, who we had on the podcast a few months ago. And I listened to this guy, and he's very funny. He's very funny. He's very clean. Let me introduce him officially. Dan Viola. He always works clean, and his credits include corporate events, comedy clubs, casinos, private parties, cruises, VFW posts, bars, colleges, wedding receptions, and churches. You name it. The National Network and TV commercials. As a husband and father of 7 kids, Dan connects with any audience, especially those willing to think outside of the gutter. I love that. Drawing on his background as a game show host, parent, teacher, coach, and salesman, he will entertain without insulting. He worked with Jon Stewart, Rob Schneider, Kevin Nealon, SNL's Jay Farrow, and Vanessa Byers, Sam Kinison, Stephen Wright, and Shirley, and was also the host of the comedy game show, The Battle of Wits. So please welcome to the show my new friend, Dan Viola. Dan, how are you?
Hey, Nazareth, how are you, boss?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for taking the time. You are where in New York?
I am in upstate New York, which is Rochester, New York.
Rochester, New York. And how is the heat right now?
Say that again?
The heat. How hot?
It's been actually a very lame summer. I am talking from in upstate New York standards. We're used to a lot of snow, a lot of cold. So we look forward to these 3 months where we actually get decent weather, and it's just been cold and rainy.
Really? Right now it's cold and rainy?
Cold in the sense that it gets into the 70s or it was in the 60s a little bit. We like it up in the 80s and 90s during the summer so people can complain about the weather here.
Oh, I
They
see.
love to complain, but it hasn't been a hot summer.
Really, we've been, I mean, I live in Corona. Corona is hot, Southern California, but this year is extremely hot. Like today was 99 and humid. Normally we don't get humidity here, so it's really just like bad. We don't like it, but
We're used to hot and humid, and this year I don't know, in the spring the summer started with a lot of unusual for us air quality warnings. We were getting the Canadian forest fires that were affecting our weather, and we had to cancel things here based on things that were happening hundreds of miles away up in Quebec. So
oh yeah,
very interesting. Very interesting.
the fire was in Quebec, and that's when all the smoke came into New York and to you
Yeah,
guys.
they were issuing air quality warnings. I've never seen those before. So
Well,
I don't
Los
know.
Angeles, they don't warn us anymore.
I know.
We're done. We know there's no air
I'm
quality.
complaining to you, and you're like amateur. The amateur.
Yeah, gotta learn how to breathe without oxygen. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
whatever particles you can take, and just try to live with that. Wow, that's awesome. So you just came back from you were in Toronto or Ontario, Canada, doing a
Right,
marriage conference.
right. It was a family Christian camp up
Okay.
in a small town called Stayner, Ontario, which I had never been to before. I've been up in that region. It's up towards Georgian Bay. So you go to Toronto and you just keep heading north.
How far is that? From where you at?
Oh, we're about 4+ hours drive
Oh,
from
yeah.
Rochester.
That's not bad.
Now we can make it to Toronto in about under 3 hours, depending on traffic. We
Now,
just got
as an American comedian going to work there, do you have to do? Because I'm going back to Calgary, and that's different. Do you have to fill up all these documents and taxes and all that?
believe it or not, no. I was talking to my friend over the weekend, and I used to have to tell the customs agents, I'm just going to visit friends. And then finally, I got the confidence and the advice that I've been given that no, you just tell them at the border, I'm a comedian, I'm doing a show up there, and then the border agents will let you go. And I don't think that I do enough shows in Canada to necessitate doing all the paperwork.
I
I've done
see.
it before when I worked for the casinos up in Ontario on the Ontario side. I had to go through all kinds of paperwork and then had to go through all kinds of paperwork to reconcile my taxes and things like that. The only reason that made it worth it was the shows that I was doing were up on the Fallsview Casino where I opened for Kevin Nealon up there or hosted some VIP gambling shows and things like that. So it was worthwhile, but man, I'm not a tax attorney. And so
I know how, what, the casinos now have changed to where they have concert halls and they charge a lot of money for it. Used to be just come and entertain people in between gambling. And some Christians would, I mean, to this day, I have not, since I became a Christian, I used to do the Aladdin in Vegas, but I haven't done a casino. And the reason why, I think it's my own thing, is like people say, oh, well, you're supporting gambling and all that. But I think it's different now. The casinos so how is your show in a casino? What does that look like?
oh well, this was a few years ago. This was pre-COVID,
Uh-huh.
and it's the first time that I had opened for Kevin Nealon, and I was very impressed with how they conducted everything. It was first class all the way. I was
Mm.
getting because they've got a theater in this casino that holds about 1,500 people,
Mm.
and they do concerts. And when you're there, you just look. The walls backstage are just lined with a huge musical and comedy acts, and big name celebrities that came in and just did, for example, Q&As, and just the people that have been in the halls. And they were contacting me the week before asking, this is the audio people contacting me, what are your sound needs? I'm like, a mic. As I guess
Yeah, that's all I
sound
need.
needs aren't quite like what Rush is going to need, when they perform there. But they took care of the paperwork. they were calling me and they said they alert the people at the border that I was coming through. I was like, wow, it's
So
a
very
lot of
professional.
attention.
That's
And
good.
it was great. They beautiful. I had my own dressing room, huge, like for 5 people. That's on the Canadian side. The American side, Niagara Falls, the Seneca, the casino there is it's a different story. And
Really? Not that good?
the Canadian side is infinitely, infinitely better planned, organized, and just the city in general. Yeah, I'm not people. It's not worth going there unless you're crossing the border.
You know,
So
this last year and this time of the year, we had a wedding in Toronto, so we went to see the Niagara Falls, but we saw it from the Canadian side, and they said it's a lot better than seeing it from the American side.
yeah, the Americans. Well, the view of the Horseshoe Falls, that's one of the main attractions there.
Uh-huh.
It's just absolutely gorgeous, and they illuminate them at night. But the Canadian side, the view is better. But just the economic development in the area. I mean, in Canada, you have your choice of restaurants, and you can say museums and attractions. And there's a comedy club. There's a Yuck Yucks right there.
Yeah.
They have malls. They have 2 casinos there. Beautiful. On the American side, I don't know. You've got the casino, but it's got a fence around it. And if you don't park inside the fence, you get your car hijacked. And they've got like a Denny's in a Ramada Inn. It's embarrassing. It really is embarrassing.
It's funny when we're on the on the Canadian side, they have an IHOP on the 15th floor of a hotel. I mean, I was like, that's an oxymoron, I know. And we went up there, and I was telling my wife, I'm like, I got up in the morning, and we had the whole family because of the wedding. And I go, you know what, honey, I'm going to go to eat at the IHOP. She goes, yeah, I don't like breakfast, junk food. I go, okay. So I go there. I go, where's the IHOP? They go, oh, go up the escalator. Like, I never went up the escalator to have breakfast. You know what I mean? So I went all the way up, and I go into the hop, and it's all glass. And I sat on a table, and I'm looking at the falls, just gorgeous. So I called my wife. I said, you need to come here. She goes, what? Did you have food poisoning or something? I go, no, you need to come see the view. And she came in, and then she called her mom, she called her sisters, she called my cousins, everybody. So we took over the whole IHOP because of the view. The food was still horrible, you know what I mean? But anyway, so
as advertised, the food, right?
now, Dan, you started comedy, and then you went to TV and commercials. How did you start? When did you start comedy, and what was like your first gig?
Well, okay. It was in college.
Uh-huh.
I was always trying to entertain my friends. I think I hung out in college. I went to Cornell, and I ended
Oh,
up
really? In New York? Good.
Yeah, and I was planning on being a veterinarian,
Okay.
and that plan changed about my sophomore year of college. But
What
when
happened?
as I progressed through, I was trying to figure out. I figured, okay, maybe what am I going to do? I wanted to be a vet all my life. And so I switched into a couple different majors, but I ended up being a communication major. I thought maybe I'd get into advertising, but my senior year there, my last semester, I was taking a business speaking course.
Mm.
And I'm missing a lot of classes due to my social life. I was sleeping through. I was not a Christian until after college. So I'm missing a lot of classes. And my advisor was teaching the class, and I was kind of in trouble. And then our final project for this class was we were going to have dinner at a nice restaurant in Ithaca, New York. And he assigned us each roles, and I was after dinner entertainment, and one of like 3 or 4 of us. So I'm in another class that I'm not doing too well in, some survey class, and I'm writing jokes because I got to brainstorm. So I had 5 minutes of jokes written for this particular class. They introduced me, and it just killed. It went over great.
Wow.
And I was starving. We had pulled an all-nighter the night before. My buddy John and I were editing a video for another class we were doing, and he and I couldn't even afford dinner. So I think between the 2 of us, we pooled our money. We ordered 1 beer and ate all the saltines that were at the table. So my set went really well that night. And afterwards, one of my friends in the class, he goes, hey, I'm supposed to book entertainment for my fraternity's 75th anniversary. He says, I want you to tell jokes. I said, what do I do? He says, tell those jokes. So I said, okay. So like several months later, I got my first paid gig. I told jokes at his frat's event and paid me $50, and I was on my way. And then when I finished college, my friends talked me into going to open mic at the Yuck Yucks in Rochester, New York.
Oh,
So
yeah.
June 6th, 1989 was my first open mic. I did 5 minutes and I had a box of props and it went really well. If it didn't go well, we wouldn't be talking tonight because I did not have
You
the
had props starting
I had
out?
a box of props, but it was like I had like a toy microphone. I had a Yankees jersey and a beach ball to stick. I did a thing where I imitated Babe Ruth in a sped up film clip, hitting a home run and running the bases. And then at the end, I ran through the whole thing backwards. It started in college when we were out, drinking some beers. And it was the kind of thing that just I tried to find what made my friends laugh and see what would translate to the stage, which is, I think, the challenge that all comedians face. Something's funny maybe in a context of an interaction elsewhere. So you sit there and think, well, maybe if I can make an audience see the humor in it the same way. And I did that for the first couple of years. I did the Babe Ruth thing. So I always had to wear white pants on stage. And then I had baseball stirrup socks that I'd pull them up and reveal them at the end. And thank God I don't have to do that anymore. I don't want to wear white pants on stage.
So you started at the comedy clubs, the Yuck Yuck, and then were you doing clean or no?
I was doing clean. And this was in early 89. And it was later in 89 that the Lord orchestrated events in my life where I got saved. But prior to that, even though, I was living the lifestyle I was 22 years old. So through college, I drank a lot of beer and chased a lot of girls. And fortunately for me, I didn't catch a lot of them. But I figured if I was going to go on stage and I had a fear of God and not yet a relationship with God for my young life, my young adult life. But I was scared to go on stage. And I remember thinking, I'm going to do this God's way. Lord, I'm going to do this your way if you'll protect me from like being humiliated. And so I started out clean. And then, a few months later, I was saved. So not much really had to change in my act. And I started out and I really tried to make a go at it. And that's one of the things I think that the Lord really used was I'm sitting there trying to figure out my life and what I'm going to do with it. And early on in my walk, he said, he started opening doors for me to get paid to do comedy. And I thought, this is far better than anything I had ever planned or imagined for myself.
Right.
So he revealed to me that his plans could be far greater than what I had planned for myself. So that was very important to me. It was instrumental. I tried to make a go at it for 3.5 years, and I was making some inroads with some different clubs. And as a clean comic, it was tough, but and I ended up just having some rugged sets towards the end of that time period, like in 1992. And I decided with prayer that I was going to quit forever, that I was done with comedy and I'd see what else he had for me. So he took other things and I quit forever. And it turned out to be 13 years.
Wow. Now, were you all that time from 89, June of 89 till 1992, you were in the East Coast in New York area, or you weren't all over?
Well, I was trying to take shows wherever I could get them. I had the mobility at that time, being single, and my parents didn't mind that, I had all my things at their house. And as long as I was traveling and could pay my bills, they were fine. But, I was getting into like some of the Funny Bones, I think, were the best clubs that I was getting into. Rochester, Philadelphia, Columbus, Ohio, Atlanta were some of the ones that I got to do. Pittsburgh. Right. So as the MC, I wasn't headlining in my early 20s. Except for, you get those one-nighters, those kind of crappy gigs that they put you. One night you'd be MCing and then you drive 400 miles and the next night you'd be headlining. And I was getting thrown into some stuff that I wasn't ready for, but I was willing to try it.
Now, where do you think you got your sense of humor? Was it your parents? What was it?
You know what? It's tough to say. But on the Irish side of the family is my mom's side. So they generally get credit for being more humorous, where my dad was a very, very hardworking Italian guy. and his parents were off the boat, from Italy. So he was still a pretty funny guy, but not around the house. We
Yeah.
we were scared of him.
Yeah.
If he came home and we weren't doing anything, we were
Now,
afraid.
how many kids did you have as siblings? How many do you have?
I was one of three boys. I was in the middle. So we had three boys, and my act, I talk about that a bit. We had Nazareth. I had no idea what it was like to live with girls until I got married. And
Me too. Me too. I'm three boys. Yeah, I'm the
yeah,
youngest of three boys. We
what
had.
number are you?
I'm the youngest. I'm number three.
Wow, okay.
Were
Yeah,
you the middle child or the oldest?
I was the middle. I was number two. But the youngest lives out in San Diego near you.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Oh,
So
farther
yeah,
south.
it was different. People don't understand when you're raised in an all boys home. Mom was the only woman in the house, and now I have two daughters and my wife and my son and my mom, and it just it's different. It's a whole different reason. Like they talk about stuff in front of my son. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? What? I'm not. I wasn't. I didn't know that growing up. I wish I did have at least one sister, so I wouldn't embarrass myself later in life. Before I got
it lends itself to some, at least some better material. I'm just surrounded here. We got four daughters out of the seven kids, and I've got my wife, and we had an exchange student from Denmark about 4 years ago. That she was 16. So we had I was surrounded by, six women telling me what to do all the time.
So what? Okay, so we want to get to that, how having that many kids, but so you left the clubs in 1992 and said, okay, what is God has something for me. What was it? What was that after that?
Well, it turned out to be a lot of humble pie. I graduated, but put it this way, I look at it as career-wise, through my whole story, I've never made nearly as much money as a lot of my friends have. I mean, I'm still pretty close. There was a time when I got saved that I just isolated myself from my entire social group, all my friends, because I thought they're just my drinking buddies, and I'm not drinking anymore. And I was sober for 20 something years, for a long time. And then gradually I allowed those guys back into my life. We reconnected, and thanks to social media, email at the time,
right,
a lot easier to connect. And I realized over time, our friendships are a lot deeper than just going out drinking. They respected my decision. They supported it, even if they didn't agree. One of my closest college buddies in this group of guys is now saved and sober, and he's I emulate him now. I was sharing the gospel with him 30 years ago, and now I look at him and I go, wow, I aspire to be like him as a Christian. And the things that he took he had to clean me up, had to get me plugged into the word. So I just needed to be home, not traveling around. I needed to be plugged into a church. And I thought it was going to be this. He's going to tell me exactly what to do. I'm going to meet a wife. We're going to get married. And it took, from that point on, it took me another 5 or 6 years. Eventually, just to keep the show shorter, without going off on tangent, he eventually revealed to me I've been a public high school teacher. I've been teaching high school chemistry and biology for 26 years. So that, and I met my wife at church, and we've been married for 26 years as well.
Wow. So, I've been married for 26 years, in 1996, August 10th.
All right.
So
you're a few months ahead of us.
Yeah. 27 will be in August, in about 9 days.
All right. Happy anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I beat you with 1 year. So you were teaching, and of course you went to Cornell, right?
Yeah.
And your parents were probably pulling their hair going, what is he doing comedy?
Yeah. They, thankfully they weren't typical Tiger mom. They had always, I had always motivated myself, and they never had to kick me in the butt at all academically. So I remember my mom saying, I don't know what to tell you. You always motivate yourself, so you're going to figure it out, right? We didn't. Right? We were supposed to send you there. Ultimately, for the people I met, it it was where I was living in a fraternity there in college, and a couple of it was an athlete fraternity. I played hockey in college, and I wasn't very good, but there was a lot of football players. There was a lot of lacrosse players, and a couple of lacrosse players moved back into the frat house. They were older than me, and they started a Bible study. They'd gotten saved, and kids called them the God Squad and said, "Don't listen to those guys." And I started listening to those guys, and I was fascinated how a couple of kids who had everything, athletically and socially, would give it all up and follow Jesus. And I'm thinking, what is it? Because again, like I was raised in the Catholic Church and thought I had, again, like I said, a fear of God, but I didn't have an intimate knowledge of God. So these guys showed me what the Bible said about salvation. And it took 4 years. It was when I got out of college that I ran into some different people that said the same thing. Even though they didn't know those guys, they were saying the same things about the word, about salvation, about Christianity. And the Lord uses it all. He used it all. He orchestrated it.
Right then, you had a good point here. And it's just like, I travel around the world and I meet Christians for the first time in different countries, and we all say the same thing.
Right.
We all say the same thing, how God, what God told us, how he saved us, what we understood from the Bible and all that. It's just so true. But so when you did that, you became a believer, all that, and you started teaching, and you met your wife, and why 7 kids?
Why?
Because
we're careless. I tell the joke on stage, and again, I know this not the format to just pretend we're running through the material as
go for it. No, anything funny here.
One of the best ways, we originally thought maybe we'll stop at 3 kids, and then typically my shows are in this area, the snow belt. When I asked the audience, I said, "You've ever driven in a blizzard?" Right? And the light turns red, you hit the brakes and you slide through the intersection.
Yeah.
You stop eventually. That was our family planning. we slid through the stop sign by 4 kids.
Yeah, after 3, boom. So 7 kids. What was that like? What was your parenting?
Boy. We started out with the best of intentions. and it's true. Now, normally I don't talk about it on stage usually, but when we got married, my wife had a 3-year-old boy from a previous relationship. I was not his biological father. She was never married to the father, and she was smart enough to get away from him. And so Caleb, he turned 4 right after we got married, and I adopted him. And we figured we should start our family is reasonably soon, so there's not a huge gap between him and the rest of the kids. And we always did our best to try to make it as normal as possible. And so we had Caleb when we got married. Then we had our next daughter, Victoria. And then about 18 months after that, we had Juliana, our 3rd daughter. And that was almost it. My wife had a difficult delivery. So baby number 2 was a C-section. And if baby number 3 was a C-section, that would have been it. We would have called it quits at that point. But as it happens, baby number 3, Juliana, she arrived on New Year's Day. It happened to be Y2K, New Year's Day.
Oh yeah, 2000. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, she was late by about a week, and the delivery was very difficult. My wife was tiring out, and they decided, let's call this. Let's give her a C-section, tie the tubes, and that's it. The only thing that happened was, because it was a holiday, the doctor was not in the hospital. They called him in for the C-section. He got stuck in traffic or delayed. He was probably out partying the night before. By the time he arrived, my wife's body had kicked it in gear and was delivering the baby. No C-section required. So because it was a holiday, we ended up having 4 more kids. If that was not a holiday, it would have a C-section, and the story would have been much different.
See, 3 of our kids are all our kids were C-section, and I thought after the first C-section you gotta have all C-section and put a zipper or something, but that's what happened to us. So we stopped after the 3rd one.
Yeah, that's hard on the mom. It really is.
Yeah, it's very hard.
I don't pretend to know exactly what it's like, but it was hard on her. But bringing home the third baby was the scariest for me.
Why?
And I was thinking, 3, what am I going to do? I mean, even though I was in my early 30s, I did not feel equipped for this. I mean, ironically, that was scary. Bringing home 4, 5, 6, 7, we're like, put them there. Put it over there. We're not painting the room. We're not doing anything. We already got the crib set up from the last one. We haven't put it away yet. But we just ended up accumulating a lot of stuff. Now that, I mean, our youngest is 13. He's going into 8th grade. We still haven't cleaned up all the stuff. We are now starting to recover. But we have so much crap in our house, in the attic, in the basement. We're trying to get the garage out. But
so you have 13. You have what? What's after that?
Going from the bottom up, it's 13, 16, 18, 20, 23, 25, and 30.
And how many are home right now?
6 of them.
6 of them.
But
so how are you dealing with anxiety and depression and girls issues and work issues and social media? Talk to me about this.
I don't know, just perseverance. I honestly think, we got to the point where we talked to friends of ours, and everybody parents differently, but we'd have friends. We'd be sitting at soccer games. Our kids, most of them played soccer. We couldn't afford to get them all into hockey. We got a couple of boys into hockey, but they'd sit there and go, oh yeah, I check my daughter's phone every night. I go through all her texts and all this stuff. And we're thinking, I don't even know what color my daughter's phone is. I don't even know where she puts it. We lost track of all that stuff. It's kind of managing, but it's also too, I try to give them our kids overall. We would describe them as very good kids. They're very academically motivated, and no troubles to really that make a great story. And they've always been pretty good. My dad always gave us enough rope and to go out and get in trouble, and he wouldn't say anything. But if you cross the line, he would jerk the leash and let me know. And I kind of have that mentality. Let them try some things, because if you try to sit on everything, if you try to helicopter mom or tiger mom it, they're going to rebel the first chance they get. And we see it through church. I see it as a teacher, I've taught thousands of kids. And, there's no one way to do it. You've got parents that look like they're great parents, and the kids go and do crazy things anyway.
Right.
And I know kids that, a particular kid I'm thinking of, she's like telling me in school this year, her mom's a drug addict. She lives with the grandmother, and she's a stupendous kid. There's no one right way to do it. And when people write these books, I got sick of hearing, like, nothing against Focus on the Family or any of these ministries or these people that come in, but they come in and they talk about parenting, and they're like, oh, if you do this, you have a means of currency that we do with our kids. If you do this with your kids, or you do that.
No, you can't do that. Let me tell you, Dan, let me vent out a story about Focus on the Family. I think it was, Jim Dobson? He was saying, when you take your kids, I had 2 kids at the time, and he goes, when you take your kids fishing, take one pole so you all can, each one can fish while the others support them. Biggest mistake. It was fighting the whole fishing trip to where we said, okay, we're going home. We're not going to fish. So yeah, not everything Dobson says or Focus on the Family says is like, oh, that's Bible.
And you're right. For the stuff that they tell you, like all the ministries and all people try to tell you what to do. And I love Focus on the Family. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I love them too. I love John and everybody, but
yeah,
right. Sometimes it doesn't apply to every family.
Back when I could read, I haven't read anything in the ages.
So how are you dealing with, like, you have the 13, the 16-year-old, and are they girls, the 13 and the 16?
Are they
girls or boys? The 13.
Girl, boy. The youngest is a boy, and then coming up it's 2 girls, and then a middle boy, and then 2 more girls. So, here's the thing: in 3 weeks, 3 of them will be gone. They'll be at college. We've already put 2 of the kids already through college. We got 2 more in college. We put 1 through rehab, our oldest, and so that was his thing. He didn't want to go to college, but we sent him to rehab. And the girls, we got Victoria. she's got her bachelor's and she wanted to go to law school. She's
Oh,
25. She's running into medical issues, so she's still living at home. She's got a condition called POTS, which prevents her from having enough energy to get through the day. So her law school plans are on hold. And I'm praying that she's able to kick it or manage it because she's accomplished so much. She's a very hardworking, intelligent girl, and she's really frustrated. But the next one, our 23-year-old, is starting medical school next week. So she's going to med school in Brooklyn, downstate med center. And then our 20-year-old, he's going to be a junior studying engineering. He's at Binghamton University in New York. And then our 18-year-old, she just graduated high school. So she's going to a Geneseo State near Rochester next week. So we're going to have Nazareth. We don't make enough money to send all these kids to college. So I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know how we're doing it.
How do you feel as a dad? As a dad, you always want to protect your kids. You always want to solve the problem. And when you're faced with someone with a chronic illness or someone in rehab, how do you personally handle it, Dan?
I can joke about all of it, and it's just my way of dealing with it. But it doesn't minimize how much I care and how much I want to do for my kids. But I think, bringing a black cloud over the house doesn't help them. My wife and I kind of counteract each other. And I think I might go to one extreme because she's Italian. She tends to overreact to everything. And so we try to handle it. But I don't know the emotional needs of the kids. We're overwhelmed. We just wake up and I just pray for the grace to get through every day, because I found over the last several years waking up early. I'm not a morning person, but when I wake up, I've got all the heaviness of life. It hits me. Someone's telling me every day when I wake up, I'm not good enough, or I'm a failure, and I've squandered all my potential and all that. And this has been going on for years. It's different at different times. And I wake up feeling terrible about myself. And then, half an hour later, once I got out of the shower, I'm like, okay, no, it's not that bad. I get to school, I get a classroom full of kids, and I know the Lord's led me where he wants me to. But, the enemy tries to kick you in the teeth, and he's after all of us. And discouragement is a big weapon that he uses. But we just plow through. We plow through. My wife, she comes from a long line of people in her family. Her family growing up, it was a struggle. There was illness, and they lived with it. And she got through it, and she came through unscathed without, a diagnosis in that regard. So we're very thankful for that. And she's had to deal with it on every generation. So,
you know what, Dan? I was reading yesterday. I was reading Psalm 100. It's one of the stuff I read every morning, Psalms and Proverbs. And so I was reading Psalm. It was all about rejoice, have joy, rejoicing in the Lord, praise, rejoice. I'm like, why do we sometimes just allow this depression and this despair hit us when we know we have a God that's, that loves us, and he wants us to rejoice in him, regardless of the situation. But my question, have you ever taken that on stage and tried to do a joke about what's going on at home?
I do, and I do, and I don't. I try not to. I try not to betray too much of my kids' personal issues for their privacy, in a sense, or I try to weave in different themes and maybe, blame it all on one child, or blame it all on this daughter, or blame it all on my sister-in-law, when in reality it's stories from several different people that I've encountered. But, rather than try to create 5 different characters on stage, you blame all these things on one child, and the people feel like they're getting to know this one child, and it helps the jokes come across more. I've done things. Now, this is kind of germane to your point. I have a joke that I wrote years ago, based on our interactions with family members, and the continual diagnoses from my wife's side of the family just drove me nuts. They would make up this syndrome and that disorder and this thing. So we had the little kids. I'm watching Winnie the Pooh all the time, and I realized everybody on Winnie the Pooh has a diagnosis. So my strongest bit was, if Winnie the Pooh were written today, it wouldn't be a children's book. It would appear in a medical journal. And then systematically identify all the characters and all their medical issues. And incidentally, the last college show I did was pre-COVID at a local liberal university. And I introduced the joke, and they have mental illnesses. I don't even say that. And one of the kids is going, "Don't go there." They're all trying to be offended because they all have a million diagnoses. And it's like I didn't take the time to explain to Gen Z or the millennials that, well, this has impacted my family and I've had to pay for it. So I can say that, which is their whole big deal. I can say it because I have a friend or a brother or somebody.
No, it happens at home.
I mean, that's it's either funny or it's not. And I really am not a big fan of how society's evolving towards eradicating all humor from our lives because of their perceived sensitivities. That drives me nuts.
That's one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because you do corporates right now and you do colleges and you do stuff. Have you noticed you have to be more aware, filtering more of your act than before COVID?
Yeah. After COVID, some things have changed, and I haven't really put my finger on it, but there's, from hearing stories from other comedian friends, crowds were very sensitive when we were coming back. And in New York, I don't know, California probably too.
California more than ever. And New York is locked down. Maybe
we were locked down. Canada was worse. Like, being from New York, I felt actually going up to Canada, they got locked down for a long time. But the South was fully open, and we're up there. We have to wear masks.
No, we're like you. I was in New York in November 2021, I think, or 2020. We could not. I mean, we had to show a vaccine card before going into a grocery store.
Yeah.
That's how bad it was down in Manhattan and all that. But I have a question for you, and it's from Chris Rossetti, and has to do with the same one. He's Italian too. Has to do with what we're talking about. How much more challenging is it teaching today's kids?
The biggest challenge, I think, regardless of all their sensitivities and their self-victimization and all that, the biggest challenge is when I started teaching. I always say my first 15 years, I didn't work a day. It was absolute fun. And because I felt like I could take the kids anywhere. We had inside jokes for every class. We just had a ball. We had so much fun. And then I'd get them talking about things that had nothing to do with the topic, which is always chemistry. I taught chemistry for the longest time. And then when it was time, we would just go into the notes. They knew we had to eventually, and they'd see how long they could keep me off topic. But in doing that, I could really intentionally manipulate the class as best I could. And when cell phones have hit the scene, and now this is like, I don't know, second generation, it seems like, of cell phone. This is the second wave of cell phone kids.
Right.
Especially after COVID. These kids are completely incapable of being able to focus on one thing. Back then, no cell phones. It's like the kids could either listen to me or they could fall asleep. Those basically their only options. They could look out the window, daydream, but it was easier to get them to listen to me. Now you're competing with, your entire virtual world.
Yeah.
And people say, I love it, because I would have said the same thing. But when people say, "Oh, you let the kids use the phones in the class," I'm like, well, short of having their phones confiscated at the door by the school, yeah, because I can't sit there and fight 100 kids a day and try to get them to get their phone out of their lap.
Right.
If a kid doing something in their lap, I pray it's a cell phone, because I'm not writing that paperwork up. But they've all got their phones and they're all distracted, and it's to their own detriment. I don't know what to do about it, and the schools haven't figured out really what to do about it. Some districts have gone so far as to have these like magnetic bags that the kids can't open until the end of the day. The kids just go on YouTube and figure out how to open the bag. People figure out ways around everything. So that's the biggest difference. The kids, though, I say this, I still love the kids, even though I'm like getting really old. I'm like 56, and supposedly I shouldn't be relating to the kids anymore because I'm too old, but the kids are fantastic. They're the same as we were. They're really the same as we were. We would have done the same thing. I think if I had a cell phone and the internet, I never would have graduated from college. I would have been so distracted. I would have been off watching YouTube for hours,
Oh, let me ask you something. You had a heart attack, right?
Yeah.
How long ago?
3 years ago. It was the timeline is COVID hit mid-March of 2020, and that's when New
Right.
York locked. And it was 3 months later. It was June of 2020 that I wasn't feeling well. My wife was out of state. She was helping her. Sorry, I got an itch on my nose. It's not drugs. It's nothing.
No, it's okay.
So my wife was out of state, and she said, "Should I stay in Alabama and help my sister out?" And I said, "Okay, whatever." She decided to fly home. She flies home. We spend Saturday doing yard work. Sunday morning, I wake up and I'm not feeling right. And she insists on taking me to the hospital. And she overreacts to everything, as I mentioned. So I'm like, I'm not going to the hospital. And another thing I didn't mention, my wife's a doctor. Well, not technically, but she has Wi-Fi. So and so she's got me diagnosed already with everything. She was right about that one. She said, "You're having a heart attack." I'm like, "I'm not having a heart attack." We went to the hospital and they tested. 5 minutes later, they said, "You're having a heart attack." I'm like, "Ugh."
Wow.
I was just mad.
You don't have a family history of heart attack?
She and I disagree on this. I did not know I had a history of heart disease, and I wasn't overweight then, and I wasn't drinking, smoking. I would drink red wine, for the most part.
That's good for your heart, too.
Yeah, that's what they say. And they just said, well, that's it. But I do on my mother's side of the family, the Irish side of the family, I think like her 6 brothers, maybe 3 of them had heart attacks. And she goes, that's heart history. That's heart disease history. But my mom just says, now they drank themselves to death.
They drink themselves to death.
It's a stereotype that you'd have a tough time disproving it.
Okay.
But I
wouldn't drink right now.
I was not expecting it at all. And I had 2 blockages. I had a blockage in my widowmaker artery had an 80% blockage. And then my circumflex artery had 100% blockage. So they put stents in those. But I guess it was pretty serious.
Now, how did you feel? Maybe it will help somebody listening.
Right.
How did you feel when you weren't feeling good? What was
it? Certainly didn't tell me I was having a heart attack. It wasn't pain. It just was like it felt like pressure on my chest a little bit. But it was more some odd lethargy that I couldn't put my finger on. I just wasn't feeling right. And of all weird things, I got up and I just took a shower to think it maybe help me clear my head if I just took a shower, and I couldn't shake it off. And I just kept telling her, I feel weird, for lack of a better medical term.
Yeah.
But I just felt weird. And she said, "We're taking you to the hospital." And it was the arm tingle. That was the one that they publicize. If your arms are tingling, that could be a heart attack. And I got finally I had an arm tingle, and I said, okay, I agreed to go with her. Yeah, like I was being all reluctant. But it's the kind of thing, you don't tough those things out anymore. Because you tough it out, you end up dead. You end up dead in your 50s.
Right.
This would have been the thing that probably would have killed me in the 1970s.
Were you scared?
I didn't have time to be. I didn't really have time. They take me to the hospital. I was just, when they said that, I was honestly thinking, oh, wow. Like I was watching it on TV. I'm like, that's a surprise. I
didn't expect that ending.
And, I remember talking in the ambulance. They took me to a bigger hospital. And I remember talking to the ambulance to one of the EMTs. She was getting married that year. And she's just keeping me talking, keeping me distracted. But we're talking about her wedding and everything. I got there. They knocked me out. I woke up. I had stents. I didn't have time to really process it. And I contrast that, Nazareth, to friends that have gone through chemotherapy. Okay, I survived a heart attack and people are like, wow, you almost died. But I have friends that had chemotherapy. That's like months of fighting it.
Right.
Where I had a couple hours, and by the time I woke up, I was healed. I was fixed. So I don't try to compare my trials with some of my friends and people I know and younger people that have gone through a lot more medical trauma.
Have you talked about that on stage?
Yeah, the joke about my wife being a doctor, well, she has Wi-Fi. That's kind of a new one, and that actually has worked. You laughed, so thank you. I don't know if you're being nice, but the audience.
No, I laughed because my whole family are physicians, but they never finished 6th grade.
Yeah, come on. Come on.
16 years ago for my stomach, but it's good for headaches. I'm like,
yeah,
okay.
They all have everything.
Yeah. So Tell me about your faith. How did you said you were around a group of people, you had the fear of God, but you kind of just watching these guys that have everything.
Oh
Then
yeah, and they were cool. They were cool, and Cornell at the time, our lacrosse team was nationally ranked. So these guys are really good athletes. They're not just on the college team, but they're on a college team that's, in the midst of fighting for national championships at that time. Anyway, they just had personality. They were relatable because I was a sophomore in college living in a frat house. 2 years earlier, these two guys, Kevin and Frank, their names were, and they were doing the same thing. They were going to parties, and they tell the story, but they tell the story like, yeah, we're swinging naked off the chandeliers. And then next week we go to a fraternity sorority Bible study. And then, they each had a different story. They weren't the same person, but they were unified, and they moved back into the frat house. Now they are seniors living there. And a lot of guys tried to avoid them, like I said, but they would lead a Bible study. Like twice a month, I think it was, but we would clear out the beer cups in the library of our house, sit down, and they would open the word. And they showed me what the word said about, again, you could be, one of my things that I remember being so fascinated about was that you could be certain that you're going to heaven. It's not this big guessing game that religion portrays. You could be certain you're going to heaven, and you're saved or you're not. The Holy Spirit is a deposit, as giving you an inheritance. And we went through all the scriptures, and I remember being, wow, I wish I could do this. And it was like 4 years before I made an official decision to become a born again Christian. And after that, my life changed, and a lot of people couldn't believe I did that. And definitely, as all of us, I think everybody listening, watching, everybody has their own story. And
right.
if you didn't grow up in a Christian family, there's a lot of different reactions that you have to that.
How would your parents react to that if they're around?
Well, as Catholics,
yeah.
My mom, she made it clear, and they're very devout. They were very devout Catholics. My mom is still alive. My dad's not, but she just said, well, we've raised you the way we think is right. And you're 22. I was maybe 23 when she was talking to me. See, you can make your own decisions, but I just want you to know that and I thought she left it at that, but they supported me. They're always so supportive. And then I went on a couple missions trips with a Christian hockey team over to Europe. It was really cool. There was hockey, basketball, volleyball, and we went into Germany, Czech Republic, and Austria, and these doors that opened up, I was like so fascinated. And they said, yeah, go. And they supported me and helped me. And they saw the changes in my life. They weren't happy it wasn't Catholic, but as long as I didn't go the route that some of my friends did, they went back and told their Catholic families, you're all going to hell because my church says this. And you realize in retrospect, that's probably not the best witness.
Right.
I don't think I'd appreciate my kids coming back at this point and telling me that I was wrong about everything I believed. And I don't think my parents would have appreciated it. So thankfully I didn't burn those bridges.
Good. Now, how was the TV show? When did you get that? And what was that like?
The game show was actually, it was not televised. It was a college market game show. And it was patterned after the Family Feud. But to my previous point about when I got saved at the age of 22, and the Lord showed me comedy is a way that actually you can make money. And that was better than anything I thought. Another one of those reinforcements from him was I got a call, unsolicited. I had no idea, but these people were looking for a game show host, and they were looking for somebody young about my age, and they had an idea of what they wanted, and they wanted to come check out my act. They were, I don't know, they were like 3 or 4 hours away. So they met and saw a show that I did, and they offered me the job. And unfortunately, I thought it would pay a lot of money and be great. And they were just starting out too. So together, it was a husband and wife team. Ray and Mary Jo, and at first our first show, I was all right. When we booked our first show the following year, I had moved to Vermont. I was teaching skiing just for the winter.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to try to ski after playing hockey all those years. I wanted to leave hockey behind for a while and go enjoy myself in the winter and ski. So I had hair down to my shoulders, right? Hair down to my shoulders. I got like the turtleneck tan from here up from, the ski tan. We go down in February. Our first show was in Montgomery, Alabama.
Ouch.
I had never before worked in the Deep South, and I had only heard the stories. And I've since been to Alabama and these places, and you realize it's actually very normal. It's very metropolitan in these cities, right? But so Nazareth, I'd never been in Alabama. We've never even practiced the show. It's the first time we're trying it. I don't even have the rules memorized. So I'm kind of winging it. But anyway, I'm fearing the worst. I'd seen, movies about the South. I step up on stage. I'm like, welcome to the Battle of Wits. And I didn't get two sentences out. And some kid in a crowd of a couple hundred, he yells out, Yankee! I'm thinking, oh, great. This is where it ends. I'm going to die in Alabama. And actually, the show went well enough that they wanted to book us back. And we cleaned a few things up. And we ended up doing great shows, but we just couldn't get the traction. We couldn't get the bookings to keep it going.
Right.
So it was a great show.
So now is this full-time? You want to do comedy full-time back now that the kids are older, you have more time?
It is interesting. I always speak on stage in the past tense of my teaching career.
Mhm.
But the reality of it is I'm still teaching. I don't have the bookings to quit teaching. And I just don't think I could sustain it.
Mm.
Like, for example, the health insurance, the reality of it is we have 7 kids.
Right.
And not only do I need this job in the health insurance, I need like another job as a CEO somewhere. But 4 more years of teaching and I'll be eligible to retire with full benefits. Should the Lord reveal something else, I could retire like today if I wanted to, but I'm planning on, God willing, seeing what doors open up, because hopefully I'm still young enough to have a career after I'm done.
Right.
And I think I've been doing comedy long enough to realize there's definitely some potential there. I've got a lot of untapped opportunities that, hey, I used to feel sorry for this one guy when I was young, single, doing the different Funny Bones in Nazareth. There was a guy I don't even remember his name, but at the Columbus Funny Bone, and I'm there and I'm trying
to there.
What's that?
I did one of my albums at the Funny Bone in Columbus.
What year? Do you remember?
97, 98.
Oh, all right. Then I think I was there. This was my first career. So I was probably there like 90, 91, something like that. Again, I'm emceeing, but I'm thinking, man, I can travel anywhere, do anything. And there's this one local guy. He was a headliner, but they told me, it's like, well, he's got a wife and kids, so he stays local. And I remember thinking, oh, that poor guy. That's so awful. And now that's me. Other comics see me and they go, oh, Dan, yeah, he can't travel that much, because, I've got responsibilities. And I've created my responsibilities. Sure, I could move to New York or LA if I could have had a great career, maybe trying that, but then I'd be divorced and I'd have an ex-wife and kids that didn't like me and all that stuff, I'm sure. So I'm right where I think the Lord wants me.
Exactly.
And when the doors open, they'll open.
Yeah, I like your attitude. That's a great attitude. You're still young. You still have a career, and whatever God has for you,
Yeah, and you know what? He'll take care of it. He'll take care of it. I'm not worried. I think sometimes about squandered potential, and I look at it in terms of finance. I made some decisions early on. Maybe I should have done this. Maybe I should have gone into something higher paying. But then I look at it and I say, no, the Lord led me right here. I only said all that stuff and think of that because I didn't realize we'd have so many kids. And I'm trying to work out a joke. I'll tell you this right now. I'm trying to work out a joke about, how they talk about the ABCs of anything.
Right.
When it comes to parenting, I'm trying to think it's all about the CBA. College, braces, auto insurance. That's where all my money goes. We got like our 4th college tuition we're working on now. We've got 5 sets of braces. We've got like 5 cars in the driveway. My daughter just hit the bridge the other day. She hit a bridge. And she's driving to work yesterday. She calls me. I'm up in Canada at 5 a.m. She goes, Dad, I'm on my way to work. Something's wrong with the car. Well, it's flat because you hit a bridge the night before and you didn't check. So, I come home from Canada and I go change this, put on the spare tire, and then I'm smelling brake fluid. I'm changing the tire. So I have to get the tire on and drive it to my buddy's garage. He owns a garage, and I've got just enough fluid to stop the car one more time before I can turn into his establishment.
Oh my Lord.
So I'm alive today.
But you know what, Dan? Sometimes we assume that what we didn't do, that we say, if I did this, maybe we always assume that what we didn't do will always be 100% successful.
Right.
And we always go, oh, if I did that, like, for me, not for a while, like when I became a believer in Christ, I left Hollywood, I left the clubs, I left the sitcom, and I went to the Christian market, and I just thought, you know what, this is what I want to do, and I feel so fulfilled doing what I'm doing. But once in a great while, when the calendar's empty and stuff, you go, man, if I stayed in Hollywood, I had a #1 show right now, and I would have made a lot of money. I would have been a household name. But then you go, well, I could have been in rehab. I could have been divorced. I could have been drugged. But we always assume what we didn't do, would have been the best. Everything would have worked out perfectly well.
Right. And I agree. I agree. I think I might not have the motivation. If comedy was all I had to do, maybe I'd hate the pressure of it. I love the fact that I get to do comedy. I still, after 20 something years, I still think I get to do it. When I'm in a club and I'm sitting there, I'm in a green room, I'm sitting there, look at this is great. How many of my friends can do it? My friends love it. They think it's great. And these guys, I don't know. They're just, I love my college buddies. My buddies around here. They get to do all kinds of different things. And I consider a lot of them very successful. But I get to do this, and it's
you get to do this. You get to make people laugh. After COVID, that's what happened to me. I was like, I started appreciating every gig I got. I want to encourage you because I have a friend, Teresa Bordeaux. She's in the East Coast as well. So I think she's in Vermont or somewhere. She was in Boston. She goes, God owns everything. Your priorities are right. He's getting you out of debt faster than you think. So
thank you, Teresa.
Teresa.
I know I see some of these comments scrolling.
Yeah, those are wonderful.
I love your listeners. I love these guys.
Oh, they're wonderful. Those were my family for 2 years during COVID. I had a show called Live with Naz every night.
Yeah,
we hang out together and we laughed and we prayed for one another, and it just became a family. And they're wonderful people. Love the Lord. So next time they hear your name, they're gonna come see you.
Please do.
Yeah. How can people book you? How can they get a hold of you?
If you could put up my email address is probably the best way. I was sharing with Nazareth. He said, but my website is not even my website.
Right. What's the email? What's your email?
Dan at I don't know if I could type it in. dvcomedy.com.
Okay. It's right there right now. We just put it. Teresa is in Maine here. Dan, that is dvcomedy.com. Guys,
that is correct.
Get a hold of Dan. This is, hey, Naz, only 12 more Live with Naz, and you could be a show number 500. I know I did 488 shows.
I'm proud to be in the 480s.
Yes. Well, this podcast is 179. It's every week. So praise God. There's 131 was watching live. A lot of people going to watch next week. Also on TikTok, we had people watching. So thank you, Dan, so much for taking the time with 7 kids and a family. That's so kind of you to take this time.
And like 6 of them are in the house. I can't believe that I haven't been interrupted for something.
I know. And I have a dog
or somebody needs to move the car. They're fighting about something. And that's not my Chargers poster. For those of you in California, that's my son. I'm in my son's room.
Oh, okay. You should be. Oh, he's a Chargers fan.
Yeah. My brother sent it to him my brother lives in San Diego and probably sent it to him. But
that's what
this
happened.
kid, he's a Chargers fan, and he last year in the playoffs when the Chargers collapsed in the second half, he locked himself in this room. And we're banging on the door. He wouldn't get out. We're like,
Oh,
we're worried for his safety because they choked.
oh, that's funny. Well,
We're in Bills country here, but I don't think any of us are really Bills fans. Bills
all
are
right.
good.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Dan. I hope we can work together someday soon.
I hope we can. I thank you so much for having me on, and thank you guys for listening. I hope it was worth your time.
It was worth our time. Yes, it was. And I appreciate you. I appreciate your heart. I appreciate you're a very positively Christian guy. I love that about you. So
And he's
thank
got a
you.
lot of work to do in me. Speak about squandered potential. I think the Lord he needs a little bit better out
I
of
don't
me.
think it was squandered. Trust me.
Right. He makes up.
It's being a dad and doing comedy and teaching those students, you really left a big impact on them. So thank you for your time.
I am very grateful for what I've had. The Lord's been incredibly good to me. He has been.
Same here. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
And
you, Nazareth. I really appreciate you, brother.
no problem. Thank you. And thank you guys for watching. And that's a wonderful, just being real, two comedians being real, open up, talk about life, faith, and that. Let your friends know to subscribe to this show. And to those who were with us today, thank you for watching. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for encouragement that you give us. We love you guys. So good to see you online. So thank you so much. I will see you next Tuesday. I'm going to have Andy Stanley's son, Pastor Charles Stanley's grandson. He's a comedian, and he's going to be with us on the show next Tuesday. So tune in. Love you guys, and have a great night.